You're listening to the Minutes on Growth podcast, the show that brings you mindfully curated insights into relationships, spirituality, personal development, and everything in between, with your host, Tannaz Hosseinpour.
Hi, soul friends. It's Tannaz Hosseinpour, and welcome back to another short solo episode of Minutes on Growth. Today, I want to talk about a fear that I've noticed many people, myself included, struggle with. And that is the fear of judgment. I am originally Persian and I was raised in Dubai, then released. And the notion of judgment, in my personal experience, I've noticed is more prevalent in conservative societies than in more liberal ones. This doesn't mean that there's no judgment in, for example, North America. But from my own experience living in both continents, I've recognized that the more conservative a society is, the more tabooness that exists, which can lead to more judgment. So growing up, I heard these statements so often. What will people think if you do that? Or don't say that in front of our extended family members. Or, it's not proper to do X, Y, and Z. So by the time you're a teenager, oh my, there's so many limitations placed on your mind under the label of it being taboo or improper. And if you think of yourself as a bird and every limitation is a person clipping one of your wings, then by the time you're a teenager, you're not really able to fly because you've been fully clipped down. That uniqueness, that original blueprint is no longer operating. And I'm not gonna lie, fear of judgment can really have a significant impact on our emotional and psychological well-being. It can lead to feelings of anxiety, self-doubt, and even low self-esteem. I've noticed that it can cause us to avoid situations or activities that we enjoy due to fear of being judged negatively by others. I'll share personal experience. I remember the first time I went to a pole dancing class, I was 18 or 19 years old. And I really enjoyed getting in touch with my body and that feminine energy. But I noticed myself constantly judging myself while I was in the class. I kept asking myself, is this proper? Am I doing something wrong? What type of girl would be dancing in this class? So many ridiculous questions based on, again, the statements that were imprinted in my subconscious mind from a very young age, and not necessarily by my parents, who, by the way, were extremely liberal compared to others, but by society in general, which included, my teachers, my friends' parents, pretty much anyone that I had a conversation with growing up. And so for the longest time, I censored my passion for pole dancing out of fear of judgment. And that wasn't the only thing that I censored out of fear. I realized that I was hesitant to take many risks in the pursuit of my goals and dreams because of this fear. For those of you who have been following me for a while, you're familiar with my initial career path. I was trained as a young child to pursue a legal career. And after getting my master's in law and getting trained in family mediation, I realized that really wasn't what my soul was aligned was meant to do. I wasn't aligned with that work. And I think I had known that truth for quite some time, but I was so scared to admit it to myself and then to others. Only when I started doing the inner work and reflecting back on my childhood did I realize that my dream was always to be a teacher, always to be someone who kind of simplified difficult concepts and shared them with the world. That's when I feel the most alive, when I believe I've had the most positive impact in the world. I realized that while I was good at family mediation and law, I wasn't passionate about it. And I really believe that unless you're passionate about something, the drive and willingness to be the absolute best either diminishes or it doesn't feel authentic. So it made the most sense to me to remove myself from that space and to allow those who are passionate about it to take over, because they can serve much better than I can in that line of work because of their passion. But I'm not going to lie, taking that risk, doing a complete 180 U-turn in my career was so scary at first. I was so worried about what my parents would think and what my extended family members would think and even what my friends would think. That fear of judgment really kept me stuck, and it did not allow me to show up as my true self, to serve as my true self, to use that unique blueprint to serve humanity. And now, as a teacher and a coach, it is one of my core missions to ensure that people have the courage to be fully seen for who they truly are. Because honestly, and I know this might sound cliche, but when you do show up as you in the way that, it's your unique blueprint, you're allowing your uniqueness to come to the surface, you're utilizing your talents and your gifts, and whether, it's the talents that you were born with or the talents that you cultivated over the years, life starts to feel like it's happening for you. It starts to feel as if almost everything is rigged in your favor. So I wanted to take a few minutes and share with you a couple of ways that you can overcome fear of judgment. These are ways that have worked for me, and I wanted to share them with you in case you're also struggling with that fear of judgment. So one of the best ways to overcome fear of judgment is to recognize and challenge negative thoughts. I want you to take a moment and ask yourself how in the past your thoughts have contributed to your mood or state of well-being. Because unless we recognize how powerful our thoughts are, we won't be as enticed to want to do the work. Perhaps it was the time when you were super excited to go on your date, but then you looked at yourself in the mirror and your inner critic made a nasty comment about how you were looking, and then you started to feel self-conscious about your body and your weight, and your whole mood shifted. Or that time when you really wanted to ask your boss for a promotion, but your colleague just made, a small minor comment about a minor mistake you had made earlier. And suddenly you have all these thoughts of not being good enough and being a failure, which prevented you from asking for that well-deserved promotion, and you started to feel stuck in your job. Once you recognize the power that your thoughts hold, then you can start to get intentional with identifying and challenging the negative ones. Because while our feelings are always valid, our thoughts are not always true. The sooner we accept this truth, the sooner we're able to challenge the negative thoughts that keep us playing small, that make us feel like we're not good enough, that prevent us from putting ourselves out there. Another way to overcome your fear of judgment is to practice self-compassion. This means that we are kind to ourselves and we remind ourselves that we're human beings, and as human beings, it's normal to make mistakes and to have flaws. No one, and I repeat, no one is perfect. I tell this to my clients all the time. Think of perfection as the last level in your favorite video game. If you reach perfection now, do you really want to spend the rest of your life, the next 40, 50, 60 years, being stuck in that same level? How boring would that be, honestly? And the moment you realize this, you let go of your attachment to perfection, which, by the way, is a coping mechanism on its own. When we allow ourselves to have flaws, we are allowing ourselves to be fully seen, meaning that we are allowing people to see our strengths and our weaknesses. Honestly, how refreshing is that? I don't know about you, but I truly, truly admire people who share their mistakes, who share their flaws and let us know, how they're working on it. It makes me feel like I'm not alone when I notice others navigating similar feelings. We tend to be so kind and understanding with others, especially our close friends, but not as much with ourselves. But if we're able to create this shift in perspective in the way that we see mistakes and flaws, then we're able to extend that same level of kindness and understanding to ourselves. Another way to overcome fear of judgment is to surround ourselves with supportive and non-judgmental people. My life changed when I got up from tables where people were tearing each other apart instead of uplifting one another. My life changed when I intentionally started to seek out people who were positive and accepting, who were validating, who, people who created space for me to be myself. Spending time with those who valued and appreciated me for who I was, for my whole self. Finding that tribe, in my opinion, was one of the biggest factors in helping me overcome my fear of judgment. Going back to my U-turn in my career, I think I honestly was able to do it when I started to surround myself with people who were honoring their truth, people who had been through similar experiences. So when my mind saw that a person had switched careers and they were now pursuing something that they were truly passionate and gifted about and they were succeeding, then it made a mental deduction that it can happen for me too. Because alongside fear of judgment, there's fear of failure. So when we surround ourselves with people who are winning in something that we are considering, people who are a few steps ahead of us, it makes it feel possible for us too. More importantly, when you surround yourself with people who create space for you to be yourself, it gives you the courage to show up more and more as yourself every day. We truly discover our strengths and our gifts, and we truly heal in healthy, safe relationships. And that includes our amazing platonic friendships. Lastly, I would suggest taking small steps to face your fears. When we expose ourselves to situations that make us feel a little bit stressed, a little bit anxious, and instead we start to intentionally practice coping strategies like positive self-talk or breath work or meditation to manage our fears, over time we start to build confidence and resilience. Our fears, or should I say the shadow of our fears, start to become smaller and smaller every step that we take towards them. I remember when I first started the Minutes on Growth podcast and community, I was so scared of creating video content. And I think for a good year, I refused to do it. I was so anxious every time I heard the word video. Until we were preparing for our in-person wellness retreat, and my dear friend and co-host Pazzi told me to face my fear, to just try it out. We were creating promotional material. So she was like, what do you have to lose? I'm here. There's no one to judge you. Try it out. If you don't like it, that's fine. But if you face it, it might not be as scary as you think it is. Now, if I show you my first video, you can tell how anxious I was. I don't even think I blinked once in the video. But the more I faced that fear, the easier it got. She was right. I don't think twice about recording a video now, and I'm so comfortable in front of the camera and an audience, but that only came after someone supportive in my community encouraged me to face the fear. So I hope, soul friends, this podcast will encourage you to face your fear of judgment and to allow yourself to overcome it so you can show up as your most authentic true self, and you allow yourself to be seen. I keep using the words allow yourself to do it because ultimately we are the ones who are standing in our own way. And I want you to get out of the way of your own greatness. I would love to hear your stories of overcoming your fear of judgment. So feel free to send me a DM on Instagram at Minutes on Growth, or to email me, because when we share our stories, we not only empower ourselves, but we empower others. Wishing you an empowering and liberating week. Lots of love. Speak soon.
Thank you for joining us this week on Minutes on Growth. If you enjoyed today's episode, then make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now.